They say you can't fight City Hall. Well, one of China's corporate titans, Huawei, isn't listening and is suing the U.S. federal government for banning its equipment.
The U.S. Congress has repeatedly failed to produce any evidence to support its restrictions on Huawei products. Still, the U.S. government is sparing no effort to smear the company.
The Trump administration has accused Huawei of spying and stealing technology from American firms. On top of its domestic ban, Washington's also lobbied its allies to shut Huawei out. Australia and Japan have sided with the US and have banned Huawei hardware, while Germany and France are considering similar action.
The United States has also been very clear with our security partners on the threat posed by Huawei and other Chinese telecom companies, as Chinese law requires them to provide Beijing's vast security apparatus with access to any data that touches their network or equipment.
But many others have sided with Huawei. At the recent Mobile World Congress in Spain, Huawei signed deals to sell equipment to mobile operators in Iceland, Indonesia, South Africa, and Turkey. Huawei wants to be at the forefront in the latest generation of high-speed internet communications. 5G is seen as the key to unlocking the widespread use of driverless cars, artificial intelligence, and smart homes.
It is still early days, but nevertheless, all of this legal trouble is giving Huawei some resistance, some headache recently, especially in terms of its global ambitions.
In the US, legal experts say courts rarely ever challenge the government's position on national security. That means Huawei may have escalated a fight it almost certainly can't win. Paolo Montesillo, TRT World.
Well, let's examine Huawei's odds with TRT World's editor-at-large, Craig Kapitas. He joins us from Paris. Thank you, as always, for being with us, Craig. So what is the basis for this lawsuit?
Well, it's essentially a restraint of trade complaint, 54 pages, that claims that the United States government is enforcing a wholesale condemnation of all of Huawei's products based on unsubstantiated fears. It claims that Huawei is subject to Chinese government influence and implying that its gear is a security threat, thereby suggesting that anyone who does business with Huawei is being, according to the complaint, unpatriotic and unwise.
So this is part of Huawei's fight back against the US. How significant a move is it?
Well, it's fairly haphazard. If you're going to try and take on the federal government, you don't open your complaint citing founding fathers Alexander Hamilton and James Madison, in which Huawei says that what they wrote in the Federalist Papers and in the United States Constitution proves that Huawei, in their words, is being deprived of their liberty in the United States. Try this type of lawsuit in China with Facebook or Google, you're not going to even make it to the courthouse steps. And as the chairman has described this lawsuit, his words, not mine, a last resort.
So does the United States have anything to potentially gain from this?
Well, what they're going to gain here is a reinforcement of the National Defense Authorization Act. Indeed, one of the things the U.S. has been saying, and we've mentioned this on Money Talks, in fact, we spoke about it yesterday, Robin, about how Nokia and Ericsson are trying to take up the slack here. Well, the Huawei complaint mentions Nokia and Ericsson, mentions the competitors, but what do they say about them? They say, well, Nokia is not a U.S. company and Ericsson's not a U.S. company, so why should you do business with them and not with us? Of course, they fail to point out that the 17 board members of the company are all members of the Chinese Communist Party. And even though the complaint states the company is a private company owned by its employees, it is controlled by the Chinese government.
So does Huawei realistically have any chance of winning this lawsuit?
Robin, I think they're going to drop it. I think it's going to be dropped for one reason. This is a civil lawsuit. And when you lodge, excuse me, a civil lawsuit in the United States, both parties have the right to depose and discover, bring in witnesses from China, demand that the Chinese in court give them documentation to prove certain things. If they don't do that, well, the suit would get thrown out. I think the last thing the Chinese government wants to do is have their people deposed in a U.S. court and have discovery take place on what they do inside China, inside that company.
Okay, Craig Capitas in Paris, thank you very much for your insights, as always.